Welcome to another episode of your Scruffy Ginger podcast. I'm your host and your Scruffy Ginger, Matt Graves. We are on episode 19 of the Scruffy Ginger Pod, and super excited to have our guest on today. He's been wanting to come on from the beginning. His name is Raleigh McGammon, and big Titans fan, really close friend of mine. And with the draft coming up next week, we're going to discuss a lot of that today and kind of some of our favorite moments throughout Titans history as far as the draft is concerned. Raleigh, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Hope everything's going well with you and you're doing all your social distancing stuff,
It's going well, man. It's going well, but we're trying to flatten this curve and get everything back to normal. So
I'm just grateful that golf is an essential business,
Yeah, no, we've definitely gotten our fair share of golf in since this time, which is, giving us an opportunity to work on our game a little bit. So definitely thankful for that as well. But yeah, wanted to jump right into it. Kind of as always, kind of wanted to give the listeners a short intro about kind of your Titans fandom and kind of where that all started.
Yeah, I guess it started. I was 7. When the Titans officially moved to Nashville, and there's not really an NFL team here super close. Obviously we have the Falcons and the Panthers that are within a couple hours drive, but there wasn't a Tennessee team. And when you're 6 and 7, 8 years old, that's kind of like formative years and fandom. So it was the perfect time for me as a child when the Titans did make the move to our state and just a couple hours down the road. Me to jump on the bandwagon, so to speak.
Yeah. So with the draft coming up, 2020 draft next week, a lot of things have happened. A lot of good things have happened of late as far as the draft goes. Of course, our GM, John Robinson, has done an incredible job with the draft, navigating that, knowing when to trade down, when to trade up, and has found a lot of steals, a lot of players that maybe you didn't expect to go when they did, but they've ended up really working out for us. But I kind of wanted to start as far as the draft class goes, maybe even predating John Robinson. It can be one of his classes, maybe it could be one of our former GM's draft classes, but first talk about, in that moment, what was your favorite draft class as far as those 3 to 4 days of the draft? When that draft ended, which one were you like, okay, this is it? But maybe those players didn't necessarily pan out, but in that moment you're like, okay, hell yeah, I could roll with this.
I think for me, that answer would be the 2006 class. And that's obviously the Vince Young draft. And you forget, so the Titans picked 3rd. There was a lot of scuttlebutt. Like, they're obviously taking a quarterback, but are they going to take Vince Young? Will they take Jay Cutler, or will they take Matt Leinart? And, I guess I was 15 then. Everyone grows up playing Madden. What's the most impossible thing to stop? A running quarterback. Not only that, but Vince Young had just put on an absolutely phenomenal performance in the national championship game and maybe the greatest college football game of all time. And so it was really exciting to have Vince Young coming to the Titans. Then you go to the second round, and the running back that they had taken in round 2, Lindale White, he had just beaten. He was at USC, was kind of the ground and pound with Reggie Bush. And you put those two together and you're like, wow, everyone has, even, Mel Kiper, Titans, A+. They're by far the number 1 draft class so far. And then even digging a little bit deeper, round 4, Calvin Lowry didn't amount to anything, but he was something you could get behind. Defensive back from Penn State. Always good to have big time college players that you see and you're like, oh, it helps kind of build the credence to those guys, even though he amounted to nothing. Stephen Tulloch, North Carolina State. Yeah, 159 games he played in the league. He was a 4th round draft pick from NC State, another power conference guy that turned out as a late round pick. Fifth round, Ternanonde only played one game in the NFL, so that one did not work.
Classic.
Moving to this later in the fifth round, another reason I loved this one at the time, they took Tennessee Vol Jesse Mahalona, defensive tackle. So that was something you can get excited behind. About sixth round, cornerback from Wisconsin, Jonathan Orr, never played a game in the NFL. So that was a bust. They took three players in the seventh round. The first one I'm going to skip over for a minute, but the last two were Spencer Toon and Quentin Ganther. I believe both went to Utah, actually. Quentin Ganther played about 3 years at running back, didn't much do anything. Spencer Toon played 3 games, didn't amount to anything in the NFL. But 2006, my favorite Titan ever was drafted. That was 215th overall, cornerback Cortland Finnegan was in the 7th round of that draft. Obviously, didn't know that at the time that he was getting to being my favorite Titan. You're like, what? Okay, great. It's a cornerback from Samford. Really cool, whatever. But this draft class for me at the time was all about Vince Young, Lindale White, and Jesse Mahalona. And, Vince Young had a good career, 2 Pro Bowls, but still you left feeling a little underwhelmed from that tenure.
Yeah, I mean, his rookie year campaign, dude. I mean, that's something that you never forget as a Titans fan. We were down. Well, we were 0-6, or maybe he came in. Maybe came in during the 6th game, but regardless, came and led to 9 straight wins. Or maybe it was during the 7th game he came in, but anyways, 9 straight wins and led us to the playoffs. And, can't ever forget that. Again, you look at the history or what ended up happening with Vince Young, with kind of the butting heads between Jeff Fisher and at the time owner Bud Adams, RIP. And, that they couldn't really ever decide on, Bud Adams loved Vince Young. Jeff Fisher did not. And it's easy to say kind of what if, but if we had a coach that was fully behind him, that was able to utilize him, who knows what could have happened. He was a stud. He did throw a lot of picks, but there was, that you hate to say that just happens sometimes, but obviously known for, how he can beat you with his legs. But Vince Young was, again, at that moment, you're like, this is our franchise guy. And Lindale, another solid pick. I think I out of that draft class, if I had to rank the top 3 coming out of it, again, this is all hindsight, but again, I'd say Vince Young is still there. I mean, he made us relevant. And then I would get Cortland Finnegan and then Stephen Tolick. I mean, Lindale White, he had that one year that he had was it like 10 touchdowns? It was something crazy. But
I'm showing he finished his career. I know he scored 24 touchdowns with the Titans. And I believe he had one year where he had quite a few. I don't know exactly what that number was, though.
It was at least 10. It was either 10 or 12. I mean, they were all at the goal line, but I mean, still.
Classic vulture.
Yeah. And then, of course, once, a couple years later, Chris Johnson joins that running back core, and you had that Thunder Lightning. Super exciting. I'm going to say my favorite draft class that I got the most excited about. Again, you're coming off, once this is not the draft class, but when we drafted Jake Locker, you're just like, come on, man. Like, he could never put a season together. It just seemed like we were consistently stuck in that quarterback position. And then in 2015, with the 2nd overall pick, we take Marcus Mariota, and that's a moment that I will never forget. I'll never forget exactly where I was. I was some might say like a loser. Like I was like screaming at the top of my lungs. But then that was round 1, the second overall pick. But then in round 2, a guy that I had my eye on when I was looking at these analysis, from the experts, Dorial Green Beckham. I mean, the dude was the size of Calvin Johnson, had the production in college that matched it, and the dude was an overall just freak athlete. And you take Marcus Mariota, you give him a stud weapon. Again, at the time, that's what we thought. That was something that I could definitely get behind. Third round, Jeremiah Batassi, guard. Fourth round, Angelo Blackson, defensive tackle. Justin Fowler, fullback. In the fifth round, David Cobb, running back out of Minnesota. That's a guy that a lot of analysts had on their kind of sleeper board that had, again, a lot of potential if, maybe in the right system. And if you just, if you really wanted it, that could be a guy that you would really want on your team. But obviously he did not pan out. DeAndres Mount in the 6th round, along with Andy Gallick, outside linebacker, and then center. And then a guy in the 7th round that I was really excited about was Trey McBride. I believe he came out of Wyoming.
I believe that's William and Mary.
William and Mary, that's right. I was scrolling through my phone real quick and took a stab at it and got it wrong. But William and Mary, and again, on everyone's sleeper list. I'll never forget. It was one of the NFL draft analysts said that this was maybe it was Mel Kiper, who some people can't despise, but said that the Titans just got a steal in the 7th round. A lot of people, I remember saying they couldn't believe that he was still on the board at that time. So on paper, that was, my favorite as far as what I was feeling on that day. That got me the most excited that I can remember as a Titans fan. Kind of transitioning, what's your favorite draft class that, looking back, had the production, also, had some exciting picks, of course. Which draft class kind of fits that mold for you?
I think it has to be, for me, 10 years later than my original one. It's got to be 2016. Yep. And I know it has taken a turn this offseason with Jack Conklin and Tajay Sharp leaving. But if you look at it, and the reason I like this one is I love draft trades. I just think I'm fascinated by them. And like, what does it cost to move up? What does it cost to move down? Are you trading a pick in season? If so, what's the value of it? So 2016, the Titans have the number 1 pick, and they trade down with the Rams, and they acquire the 15th pick. Well, they end up moving up from 15 to 8. And then all this, so essentially what this trade becomes, if you look at it now, the Titans traded essentially Jared Goff for Jack Conklin, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, Austin Johnson, and Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that both Jack Conklin and Derrick Henry are more valuable than Jared Goff. And Jonnu Smith is a nice player. Corey Davis is a nice player. Austin Johnson's not a bad player, and Jared Goff is wildly overpaid. He's a mediocre quarterback. So I love 16 because that was such a great move. You get so many players out of it. Don't forget 2016, round 3, Kevin Byard.
Never forget it.
Never forget.
I mean, dude. I think he actually is a captain. I was gonna say the captain of the defense, or at least the captain of the secondary. But dude, that guy, just a MTSU grad. Again, if you're not a college football fan, or let me rephrase that. If you don't pay attention to what the analysts are saying, you'd probably never heard of this guy. And honestly, in the third round, there were probably even some teams out there that thought that we maybe took a little bit of a stretch and to draft him at that moment. Of course, looking back now, he's had the production to become the highest paid safety in the league, at least at that time. I'm not sure if somebody eclipsed him since then. But the dude's a ball hawk, dude. I mean, he's flying around. He finds the ball once it's in the air. So for a third round pick, that might be the best third round pick that the Titans have had. I'll have to do a little bit of research to kind of confirm that, but I'd say it's got to be in at least the top three.
Yeah, other notable third round picks that turned out to be, solid. Jonnu was a third round pick in 2017. Obviously, Kevin Byard, like we discussed. I was really high on Bleedy Ray Wilson in 2013. Obviously, that didn't go well for me. Jarrell Casey was a third round pick in 2011. 77th overall. Jared Cook was a third round pick. I remember that one in 2009. Jared Cook was a third round pick. And the Titans actually traded a second round pick for the 89th overall, second round pick in 2010 for the 89th pick in that year's draft, a third rounder to take Jared Cook. And I was like, wow, they're trading a future second for a third rounder in this draft. This guy must be, he better be good. And he was pretty good. The only other notable third rounder that I can see 2004, Randy Starks, defensive tackle, and 2003, running back Chris Brown was also a third rounder. But the main two got to be Kevin Byard and Jarrell Casey, both being third round picks. So, the Titans have had pretty good luck in the third round. Maybe not so much in the first and second, as we'll get into here in a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something that we were gonna kind of touch on a little bit, and kind of later once we bring Drew on the pod to kind of talk about this upcoming draft and kind of what we're thinking. But of course, with the whole production of rounds 1, particularly, but also round 1 and 2, you kind of, once day 3 rolls around, like the sexiness of the draft, as far as the average viewer, just kind of goes away. Every pick is just kind of like, there's not a presentation that really goes along with it. But just like you said, I mean, we've had a lot of really great luck in the third round. I think if you had asked the normal Titans fan when someone like Jarrell Casey or Kevin Byard, what rounds they were drafted, they would probably say either the first or second round, just because of the production that they brought. But obviously, there's a lot of value that can be on day 3, which we'll touch on a little bit in, I guess, the quote unquote part 2 of this podcast. But honestly, man, 2016 was going to be my choice as well. So you touched on a lot, but I'll move up more recently, just because I think John Robinson is arguably has been our greatest GM to date. Not only does he bring that confidence and swag to the Titans, but the dude knows how to operate on draft day. He looks at picks as currency, essentially. Just trading back and forth with people, moving up, moving down. I mean, I'll have to go back and look, but I think with the exception of Rashaan Evans, and I think with the exception of Corey Davis, we had moved at least up or back.
We actually moved up 2 spots for Rashaan Evans to move in front of the Patriots.
That's right. Right when I said that, I was like, I feel like there was something that went along with that, but it had escaped me exactly what the details were. But that's actually the 2018 draft class. Of course, 2019, there's some big names there. I think that some of the players will pan out. I'll actually combine 2018 and 2019 since they're so fresh on people's minds. 2018, we only had 4 picks. So we really had to hit a home run with at least 2 of them. That's at least the hope. I mean, you understand you're not going to get all picks. They're not always going to pan out. But I would argue the only person in the 2018 draft class that did not pan out was Luke Falk, taken in the 6th round. Quarterback. Again, you don't know who he is for a reason. Was basically just a practice squad guy. Honestly, not really sure what he's doing at this time. But you look at round 1, Rashaan Evans. He's my pick. I think he had a breakout year this year, but I think next year is going to be a potential Pro Bowl year for Rashaan Evans. He's done wonders at the middle linebacker position, and I'm really excited to see kind of what he does in the 2020 season. And then in round 2, Harold Landry, the most underrated edge rusher, arguably, in the entire NFL. This dude had more tackles, I think the same amount of sacks, but more tackles than Nick Bosa last year. And he wasn't even considered for the Pro Bowl, which is hilarious. Of course, they're going after the blockbuster name, brother of Joey Bosa. So there is that kind of sexiness to it that they want to, go after and kind of put on a pedestal. But Harold Landry, nobody talks about him, at least as far as the analysts are concerned. When I read that stat, I was really baffled, but really looking forward to see what Harold Landry does. He's another guy I'm looking to make a huge step this upcoming season. And then Dane Cruikshank in round 5, a huge special team guy and a rotation guy that we can put in our secondary. He's done a lot. He was famous for catching the fake punt that Kevin Byard ended up throwing to him. That bomb to go into the end zone. So the dude's athletic. He's more of a special teams guy right now, but you never know. If injuries happen, he might get the green light to really kind of show what he's capable of. And then, of course, moving into 2019, Jeffrey Simmons with a 19th overall pick. Everyone, if you follow the draft of college football, you know why he dropped to 19. He had a little altercation, and that kind of just set him back. Teams got nervous about drafting him. That was of course pre-college, and Mississippi State had nothing but great things to say about him.
Also, he was also coming off a torn ACL.
That is also very true. So teams were scared about that. They you basically know going into it that he's definitely not going to start game 1. And you have to go into it knowing that he may not play the entire season, but this is an investment. He was once talked as a top 5 player. So when he dropped to us, of course, everyone was a little bit skeptical, but after now that the season has ended, everyone can see that was the absolute steal of the first round in 2019. And then, of course, I'll come back to round 2 here in a second. Round 3, Nate Davis. Round 4, Amani Hooker. 5, DeAndre Walker. And round 6, David Long. Amani Hooker has done a lot. He's a rotation guy in the secondary. He's also a huge player on special teams. I think he can grow into the position and do a lot for us in the upcoming seasons. But, of course, A.J. Brown in round 2, taken notably over DK Metcalf. I remember I was in Nashville for the draft, and if you go back to, I think, episode 3, you hear a really hilarious story about what happened during that draft, why I ended up in the ER that night. But I remember watching us take A.J. Brown, and honestly, my first thought is we missed out on DK. Like, how did we miss on DK Metcalf? Of course, the dude's a specimen. He's a freak athlete. But if you go back and you read things that Ole Miss fans looking at A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, everyone, it's not even a question. I mean, DK had the the national media attention, but every Ole Miss football fan will tell you that A.J. Brown has always been the better receiver. And once I had those conversations, I mean, I was extremely happy. And then, of course, we saw what he did during the season. The dude's going to be an NFL superstar, and I'm glad he's on the Titans.
Oh, I am too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a promising future with the 2018 and 2019 draft classes. Of course, you still have your 2017s, the notable ones: Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, Jonnu. These people are stepping up in a huge way. So John Robinson has found a way to, draft not only the right players, but the best players for our system and our team. So really excited to see what we're going to do this upcoming week. Any more thoughts on kind of just draft classes that we've done in the past? Maybe do you have someone on your paper on kind of in your list that you would say, and maybe you could go back a few years. I'll go back and kind of tell you who I think maybe in the later rounds of the draft, who might have been the best value pick the Titans have had.
Sure. So just going back, I mean, we're going day 3 here. So rounds 4 through 7. Is that the question?
Yeah.
So I would say from rounds 4 through 7, just looking back through the years, Trey McBride was fine. Daquan Jones, 2014, was a good one. 2014 5th round, Avery Williamson was actually that round, that draft as well. 2013, I really liked Brian Schwenke as a center in the 4th round. That I was wrong. Maybe my favorite would be 2011 5th round Carl Klug. Carl Klug out of Purdue.
Carl Klug, man.
Sorry, out of Iowa, not Purdue. Sorry, Carl Klug. Is like who is this guy? He's a big white dude. Defensive tackle from the Big Ten. Great, he'll be out of the league in a couple of years. He was not. He just retired, I believe, before last season. Was really productive with the Titans for his entire career. Just looking through this list, the Titans have done really well. Myron Rolle didn't pan out, but was somebody I was very excited about. Jason McCourty in the 6th round, 2009, was really good. I was really high on Javon Ringer as a running back out of Michigan State. He was 5th round in 2009. Got a quick chance to start for the Titans and just wasn't able to make it happen and to contribute at all. I got 2 more for you, Matt. 2005 in the 4th round, David Big Country Stewart was an all-pro tackle. Played 116 games with the Titans before he retired out of Mississippi State. And was actually, he and Michael Roos, who was also drafted in 2005 in the 2nd round, just anchored that offensive line for some great seasons for the Titans.
It's not every draft that you get both of your bookends in the same draft. I mean, because you're right. Like, they were staples, staples of our offensive line for 10 years.
Yep. They started at left and right tackle every week they were available. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention 2010 Alteron Werner. I did like him. But my favorite one, and I can remember exactly where I was when this happened. 2008, I was at my best friend Benton's house. We always had watched the draft together. We're in the 4th round, and there's some good players on the board. The Titans have traded up. And we're like, so Benton is a huge, huge Colts fan. I hate the Colts. So the Titans are on the clock. We're both excited because he wants to make fun of the pick and I want to cheer it. And they announce that we are selecting William Hayes from Winston-Salem State. And I'll never forget it because Mel Kiper says, wow. And we're getting into it, digging deeper into it, on the telecast. And Kiper says, I scout over 2,000 players for the draft that I think may have a chance to get drafted. If I think there's a remote chance to hear their name called. I'll do a full report on them and have a film package ready. And then he says, William Hayes was not on that list. And so they had no film. Kuiper knew who he was, but he ends up playing 137 games for the Titans, in his career, not necessarily for the Titans. Finishes his career 37 and a half sacks. So for a guy that Mel Kiper said was not in his top 2,000, that's a pretty good career. And I'll never forget my buddy Benton just losing his mind laughing at me. And it's been the recurring joke of many text messages in the 12 years since is, William Hayes, even though he turned out to be, pretty darn good NFL player.
Yeah, no, that William Hayes had a great career, and he played 3 or 4 seasons with the Titans. One of the guys that I look back, that not necessarily at the time was like super excited about, but looking back, one of the quality value players, 2005, 6th round, Bo Scaife.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude was a stud tight end for the Titans for so many years. I believe it was at least 5 years. And then, of course, your favorite player, Titans player, Cortland Finnegan in the 7th round. We've already talked a little bit about him, but I went to college in the same conference as Cortland. Didn't really know a ton about who he was because UTC has generated some NFL players, but when you move from Knoxville, that D1 Power 5 program, and you go to a school like UTC, it doesn't feel the same. So I didn't really pay attention a ton to the football team in Chattanooga, but having Cortland Finnegan kind of come out of the Southern Conference, that was pretty cool to see. But yeah, man, the Titans really have had a ton of luck in the later rounds. I mean, you have Donnie Nicky, 2003, just a stud player on our defense and special teams, really. I believe he played nickel for us primarily. But yeah, man, the Titans, it's interesting because even though sometimes we have in the past, we'll say 10 to 15 years, we've had these pretty good draft classes scattered throughout. It hasn't always panned out to equal production and wins on the field. That being said, with this new regime, with Amy Adams-Strunk at the helm, John Robinson and Mike Vrabel, there is a sense that something's different. Things are changing. Now, of course, as Titans fans, we've known this since they came into their respective positions. But for the other NFL teams' fans, I don't think they fully understand what's happening right now, because after everything that happened this offseason, the Titans are in the driver's seat to win the division. The Texans made some just bonehead moves. The Colts, had a good defense last year, but they have now Phillip Rivers as their quarterback. We beat Phillip Rivers last year. We played against him many times. We played him the year prior as well and lost because we were going for a 2-point conversion, and it did not go our way. So we know how to beat Phillip Rivers. I'm not really worried about that. And the Jags are the Jags, and they'll always be the fucking Jags. So I'm never worried about them, though they did get one on us in week 2 this previous season. But yeah, I mean, let's wrap up this kind of first segment. We're going to bring Drew Worley on. He's been a guest on the pod several times, and we'll get him on and we'll talk about this upcoming draft and kind of who we think, who we like, what positions we need to fill, and kind of who the analysts are saying we might go after. But any final thoughts, Raleigh, just about kind of the draft classes in general?
Just that it seems, even if you don't like the first round pick, we've had some first and second round whiffs as Titans fans, but they've really done a great job here in the later rounds. So if you do watch the draft, really do tune in to day 3 because the Titans have done really well in those day 3 picks.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good point. Do not let the monotony of day 3 hold you back from tuning in, because you never know. You might be seeing another Cortland Finnegan or someone like that being drafted that's really going to be an impact player for years to come. Well, that's a good spot to kind of just wrap up this first segment. We're going to bring Drew Worley on here and finish up this conversation. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. But keep listening. We got some good things ahead. And we're back with the Scruffy Ginger Pod with Raleigh, who you have previously been introduced to. And we're bringing our boy Drew Worley back on the pod to discuss the 2020 draft, kind of what we're looking at, who we're looking to scout, what positions, and all that. Raleigh, welcome back. Drew.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome back to the pod.
It's been a while. I don't think that I've been on here since our tough loss there in the playoffs. So it's nice to be back, putting that behind us and moving forward.
Yeah, I'm trying to get some other people on to kind of shed the love a little bit, but that was definitely a rough episode. But we're looking forward now to 2020-21 season, and first things first, got to talk about the draft. So, what position do you guys think that we need to kind of really go after in round 1, and maybe some players within that position that you think might still be there at pick 29?
Raleigh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there are 4 main positions. One of them being wide receiver. I don't expect them to go wide receiver in round 1, but I do think a pick at wide receiver would make sense. I think they are most likely to go offensive tackle, pass rusher, or secondary. So, there are 4 main offensive linemen that will be way off the board. Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, and Jedrick Willis are all supposed to be top 10 guys. So it looks like the guys that may be available for the Titans at that position would be Josh Jones from Houston and Ezra Cleveland from Boise State. Pass rusher, the only 2 guys that you see mocked to the Titans, AJ, I believe it's Epinesa from Iowa.
Correct.
And from Penn State, Yetur Gross-Matos. And he's kind of a hybrid 3-4 defensive end, but could maybe play outside linebacker as well. Secondary, there's, like 7 people that I've seen mocked to the Titans, and we can dig deeper on them a little bit later.
Yeah, those are all great points, Drew. Anything to add on that up?
No, I mean, I agree with Raleigh. I think that at some point you're going to see, I do not expect it to be round 1 either, but the Titans do need to add another receiver, I believe, just another threat, especially with the amount of energy that teams are going to put into stopping Derrick Henry this year going up against us. The more speed and danger that we have wide, I think is going to be just really beneficial to help us. I think cornerback is where the Titans are going to go first. Everything that I've kind of seen seems to point towards that, or an edge rusher. I've seen Jalen Johnson quite a bit popping up from Utah. He's a junior who declared early. He's a nice talent. It's going to be interesting to see, though, like Raleigh said. I mean, I've seen a Fulton from LSU as well. If we're talking about guys, and I know we're going to get into like a little bit deeper about, who are, like Raleigh said, we're going to get to some guys later. One guy that I've been looking at a lot recently who has put up some really impressive numbers is Chase Claypool. He is a monster from Notre Dame, and it's actually a really interesting story. He's from Canada. And Raleigh, have you heard about this kid? Are you familiar with his story?
Yeah, wide receiver from Notre Dame, athletic freak.
Yeah, so He's from Canada. He didn't really have any offers going into his senior year, played high school football up there. So obviously that's a little bit tougher to get coaches to recognize you. Him and his friends just kind of started, plastering his highlight tape everywhere. The offers started to roll in. He ended up at Notre Dame. Was just a prolific weapon for them throughout his entire career. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see, one thing I really like about him, especially the way the Titans use a player like Jonnu Smith to create a mismatch. This guy is a little bit more athletic than Jonnu, to say the least. He's 6'4", 238. He recently ran a 4.45 40. So it'll be interesting to see, maybe the Titans go after a guy like that, someone that can, get down and block, or a guy that they can get out on the edge and catch the ball. So that's kind of, I guess, not to jump the gun, one of those names that I'm really excited about to see where he ends up. I know that teams like the Colts have been scouting him pretty high. Obviously, he's right there in South Bend. So, his official scores at the combine were 4.42 40. 40.5-inch vertical and a 126-inch broad jump. He had 19 reps at 225 on the bench. So that was that ranked top 10 among receivers at the combine. So it'll just be interesting to see, who picks up the guys like that. And traditionally speaking, the Titans, I feel, have been pretty good at that, So once again, I think, to go back to the beginning of this, sorry for rambling a little bit, cornerback or edge rusher. Want to see the Titans get to the quarterback a little bit more than they did last year.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with a lot of both of what you said. I do think that if there's not a top 4 or 5 tackle waiting there at pick 29, I think we do go defense. I think we do go edge rush, someone that can really get after the quarterback, just like you said, Drew. One of the guys, if he's still there, and Raleigh, you may have said this name initially, but I think Derek Brown out of Auburn, if he's still there at the 29th pick, then I am that would be someone that I could really get behind, someone kind of joining the squad. If we're going to look at receiver, someone that's not flying necessarily under the radar, but it's probably one of those guys that if you don't really pay attention to the NFL or really to college football or kind of the prospects, you may not know who he is. One of the guys I'm looking at is out of Arizona State, Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
He's an absolute freak playmaker, someone that could really complement our receiver core: Corey Davis, AJ Brown, Adam Humphries, Jonnu up the middle. I think he could really add that additional playmaker factor, that impact player, maybe help us in the kicking game as well. Those are two guys that I'm looking at. That if maybe someone like Ayuk, he could drop to the second round potentially, and we could make a run for him there. But I do agree, when you have someone like Derrick Henry, you've got to find a way to continue to protect him. And especially with Jack Conklin now being, to the, with the Browns, you have Dennis Kelly moving in, and he's done a lot of really good things. But if we can find someone to be able to push him, bring in that competition, I think that's always going to be something that you look at, especially for the offensive line. So go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I think too, like you said, the thing that's really interesting looking at the picks that the Titans have is, they need, from everything we're seeing, pass rusher, okay. They need a cornerback. They need a wide receiver. We're saying all these things, but let's not forget, we also need a backup quarterback now, who's going to be the future at quarterback. And we also are going to need to add a running back. So, Raleigh, I'll ask you, because I trust that you've probably looked into this pretty handily. Do you expect the Titans to trade around to get some additional draft picks? Do you think they're pretty set with the picks that they have? How do you think that the Titans are going to navigate the draft in terms of what they have or could have?
I think a lot of that depends on what's sitting there at 29. If there are a few players available that they like, I think 29 is prime trade down territory, because we do have so many needs, and there doesn't seem to be, like Matt said, Derek Brown from Auburn. I've seen every mock draft I've seen has him in the top 8 picks. So if he's not available, and we have all these different things like positions of need, there are teams that have, 3 second-round picks. Like, could we trade 29 to get, 34 and 42 or something like that? And that might be a little bit of an overpay. But, John Robinson has proven his ability and willingness to trade around. So I would not be, I'll put it this way. I would be surprised if the Titans made all the picks at the picks that they currently have, if that makes sense.
When you talk about the things that the Titans need, they, a great cornerback, a pass rusher, you can find elite talent like that in the second and third round. So, a lot of the things, and backup quarterback too. One guy who I really like a lot, who started to gain a little bit of momentum and interest, is Nate Stanley out of Iowa. A guy who's expected to go in the later rounds. I think a lot of the things that the Titans need, will be available later in rounds. So, like you said, if they can trade down and add a few additional picks just to make sure they're covering their bases, because, they do also need a backup quarterback. They do also need a backup running back. And I don't think that they're going to want to wait till the 7th round to acquire, the leftovers, especially with, I would imagine, and you guys might disagree, that, first, second, third round pick, I would say that you can pretty much almost guarantee that you're going to see an offensive lineman, a cornerback, and an edge rusher go with those picks. So, if they trade down, like we're saying that they possibly could, I still think you'll see those 3 needs met first. But if they can add some value in that 4th to 5th, round range by trading down a little bit to be able to get a backup quarterback, to be able to get a quality backup running back, I think they should do it. Absolutely. Especially if the guys are available, like Raleigh said.
One of the great things about where the Titans are now is that everything, like, there's no dire needs. Like, these are kind of luxury upgrades. Like, yeah, we need pass rusher, but we also have Rashaan Evans, we have Harold Landry, we have Daquan Jones, we have Jeffrey Simmons. Like, pass rusher is great, but it's not the end of the world. So, even if, so like 2 guys I love in this draft are both safeties. And I think safety could actually be a position of quote unquote need. Because, okay, we have Kevin Byard. Yeah, like no one's, replacing him. But Kenny Vaccaro, like, he's got cut for a reason. Like, he's been good for the Titans, but, it's nice to have someone behind him. Amani Hooker could be good. Dan Cruikshank. Both of them look like maybe third guy special teamers. So, Drew, and I have a feeling you're going to agree with me here, but one guy who started the season as a projected top 7 pick that's now looks to be slipping in the late first, maybe second round, that I would sprint to the podium or whatever they're doing this year to turn in the card for. If he's available at 29, I'm not passing on Grant Delpit out of LSU at safety.
No.
If he's available, that's the guy that I want to sprint, or whatever you have to do to get that pick in. That's my guy. That's the guy I want. If he's somehow at 29, the Titans are in a great position to just take best player available. And that's a guy that I just love. And he's slipping because, he misses tackles. That guy's a top 10 talent. He's a little inconsistent tackling, but he's a ball hawk. I love him. Another guy, Antoine Winfield Jr. from Minnesota, also safety. He had seven interceptions, 88 tackles, and 3 sacks. Kind of a jackknife you can put back there in the defensive backfield. But Grant Delpit, if that guy's there, give him to me all day long.
I mean, look, he was a 2-time consensus All-American. He won the Jim Thorpe Award. He can lay the lumber, but like you said, he's a little bit inconsistent. He is gaining quite a bit of interest, but like you said, he's just one of those guys. It's going to be interesting to see how far does he drop. But I do agree with you. If he's available, I think the Titans should absolutely sprint to the virtual podium and get him. It will be interesting to see if the Saints make a play for him, with him being from New Orleans right there. But that would, you could not go wrong with that guy. I mean, he played for a national championship team. He played in the SEC. He knows what, the top competition looked like, and he was a consensus 2-time All-American, Jim Thorpe Award winner. I mean, those are all the credentials. Just as far as the eye test goes, the guy passes it every single day. So yeah, I don't disagree with you at all as far as he goes. And then the kid out of Minnesota, yeah, he is a stud. I believe I saw him make a couple of big plays in the Penn State game when I watched him play this last year, and he flies around the football field. Can pretty much play anywhere in the secondary. Could see him even lining up in like a nickelback role. Yeah, I think the Titans could definitely go that route as well. I mean, anytime you have a chance to get, elite talent that can play multiple positions, you should definitely run towards that, right? Versatility is always going to be a good thing, especially in the NFL.
And especially picking that low in the first round, like, you can't, it's hard to game plan for like, yeah, I want this position. Well, what if there's a run on cornerbacks and all these guys, Johnson and, CJ Henderson will be gone and all this stuff, like Trayvon Diggs, AJ Terrell, Jeff Gladney, Jalen John, they're all gone. Christian Fulton. If all those guys are gone, like, you don't want to just take the 8th ranked corner because you need a corner. Like, take your best player available. And if that means taking a stud like Delpit and Winfield and worrying about upsetting Kenny Vaccaro, fine, take them and figure that out later.
Yeah. And I mean, I think sometimes you do see, these GMs and these decision makers tend to overthink it, right? I mean, if you have an elite talent available, take him, figure it out, upgrade, trade that guy and get a veteran for the position that was quote unquote really of need. I mean, you could always take the elite talent if you can get it. I agree 100% with that.
Yeah, no, I think kind of going on what you said, Raleigh, or maybe it was you, Drew, or maybe both of you guys said it at some point, but we don't have any like gaping holes right now. I mean,
other than kicker.
Well, yeah. I forget who's actually on the roster if we actually like sign somebody. But I mean, we're talking the 29th pick right now, so not really. That's not really where my mind went, but. Kind of like you said, I mean, we're looking to add depth at this point, someone to bring in competition. The only player that catches my eye that would be a real shot from left field that I think we would end up getting commended for, but in the moment, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because of what we just did with Ryan Tannehill. What are y'all's thoughts? If Jalen Hurts is at 29, what do you think?
I would venture a guess. He will be there. I feel very confident in that. He's gotten 3rd to 4th round grades, but there's always a run on quarterback, so it's tough to take this seriously. The Titans will not take a quarterback at 29. I could see them taking one in the 3rd round, maybe the 4th. But I think these first 2 picks are going to be spent on, tackle and probably edge rusher. Drew, what do you think?
Oh, I'm gonna preface this by saying it is contradictory kind of to what I just said when elite talent is available. I think that he has the potential, especially if he rebounds from this injury, which all indications are that he is doing. Obviously, I'm a huge Tennessee fan, and I do not generally like the University of Alabama, but I love the way this kid plays football. I like his family. I like the way that he conducts himself. He makes throws that many tenured quarterbacks in the NFL cannot make. He has an elite ability to put the ball on the spot, sideline to sideline. He can stretch defenses. He can make the short throws. He can move. He can do it all. But like Raleigh kind of said, I don't really see any reason that the Titans would do that. We're kind of talking about those trading type situations, which you could see is maybe, another team wants them at 29 and the Titans trade down and pick up a draft pick out of it. I think that's the best sort of situation with a guy like that being available there. But no, the Titans unfortunately won't take him. In a perfect world, if he hadn't gotten hurt, he wouldn't be available there anyway. I think he's going to be an elite talent, and I wish him all the best. But no, the Titans will not take him there. One name that I do see on some of these mocks that's available around there, since we're talking about wide receiver, that would be kind of intriguing. And this is a little bit of hometown bias, is T. Higgins, the Oak Ridge prospect who went to Clemson University. Talk about an athletic freak of nature. The only thing that, I don't know, at times has been questioned about him is kind of his headspace, but that might be a guy that, just for me personally, would get me a little bit excited, if he was available in that 30th range.
Yeah, I have him written down on my list as well. T. Higgins is pegged to go around that side, around that spot in the draft.
Or along with Ayuk, Matt's the guy that he talked about. So yeah, that would be that would be a tough choice if the Titans decided to go that route.
And the third guy that I think I like the best, I actually have him number 2 on my list of guys I'd like the Titans to get behind Delpit. At wide receiver is Laviska Shenault from Colorado. Kind of a jackknife. He was unreal. He had a great junior season 2 years ago. Kind of had an injury-riddled, unproductive senior season. He's kind of a boom or bust prospect. He's 6 feet, 227 pounds, ran a 4.5 40. He ran the Wildcat for Colorado. He is coming off surgery on his core that he just had after the combine. But he has been called a mix between Cordero Patterson and A.J. Brown.
Well, that's not a bad combination. I mean, we'll get into this later too, but if he is available later in the round, I wouldn't be if you want to talk about some hometown bias, if Jawan Jennings is available late in the, where is he projecting to go right now, Raleigh? Like 6th round, I would guess, or so.
4 through 7, anywhere on day 3 is what it appears.
If he's available later on in one of those rounds, and the Titans still need a wide receiver, I think they would be stupid not to take him. He catches the ball. His yak is ridiculous. He's tall. He's one of those guys. Don't worry so much about the 40 time and all of that. The guy's got football speed, and I know I'm a Tennessee fan, so a little bit of bias, but if you want to talk about a possession receiver that the Titans can trust to get yards after the catch, I think that would be another intriguing pick. And I will be curious to see where he ends up anyway, obviously, as a Vols fan. But if the Titans don't get on one of those guys early and they do kind of go the route that we expect them to, and don't really trade around a bunch, they just have picks in the 5th round and then the 7th, 3 in the 7th, I'd love to see them go after Jennings. A little bit of bias, I'll admit, but the guy, gets yards after the catch, and that's always important, especially in the NFL.
Yeah, but the bias is like it's biased, but it's also there's quality there. So I couldn't agree more. I would love to see him in a Titans uniform.
He also did with Garantano. I mean, Jesus, I'll be happy to see. Now, granted, I know we just paid the guy a ton, but I mean, Tannehill, in the way the Titans run the offense, it's not like we're going to be slinging the ball a ton back there. But I do think he's a guy that, if you need a guy who's going to make tough plays, he's proven all throughout his college career that he's going to make them.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of our offense now, right? It's like run heavy and then rely on guys who can just catch the fucking ball. It's, whether it's quick slants or, 10-yard outs or whatever, like just get guys with reliable hands. Like that's our third down kind of game right now. Kind of going back and Raleigh, because I know you've got some lists pulled up, and Drew, you mentioned this kind of early on, not finding a replacement for Derrick Henry, but finding someone that can complement him, that can come in if he does need a rest, maybe on 3rd down. Now that we released Deion Lewis, he's a Giant. Who are some players, some running backs out there that you would like to see in a Titans uniform? And are they guys that would be like a Thunder Lightning, or are we thinking Thunder, just continue to pound it down the opponent's throat?
Yeah, I think if the Titans are going to take a running back, it's going to be someone who's shown an ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Antonio Gibson from Memphis.
He's a stud.
He's a stud. He's currently graded 6th round. You're not going to trust him. You're not going to hand him the ball a bunch of times. But if you need someone you can kind of play as a running back, play them as a receiver, I think Gibson would be a great one. Coming back to our Tennessee bias, guys that we did not get, that we recruited heavily.
Yeah, I think you're about to say the same thing that I'm about to say.
Yeah, the other two guys I like are Cam Akers and Zach Moss.
Yep.
Those I prefer those guys. Like a Jonathan Taylor would be great, but he's not tremendous catching the ball out of the backfield. DeAndre Swift will not be available after the first round, so he's not really an option. Hilaire from LSU probably going early. So I would say the people you're talking about are Gibson late or Moss or Akers in like round 3 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, what do you think?
Well, I think first of all, Chuba Hubbard would be a great pick, but I do not think that he'll be available. I love his game quite a bit, but the number one attainable name on my list is one that you already said. He did not have maybe the most glamorous college career, but a lot of it was because of the turmoil at Florida State, is Cam Akers. You can even go back to his high school tape. He is a freak. He has the ability to get out on the edge, kind of do things similar to what Kamara can do, right? He can catch the ball. He can run between the tackles. Hard-nosed runner who maybe didn't hit the pinnacle of what he's capable of doing in college, but a guy that could actually peak in the NFL. I really like his game quite a bit. Also, a name we haven't mentioned, a little bit of state, hometown state bias, if we're going to call it that, is Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vanderbilt. I really like the way he runs the ball. Hard-nosed runner, guy that will definitely be available. And then throw another name out there who I really, really like. He plays for a winning program. He's a speedy guy who could get out and catch the football as well, is Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State. They won 13 games last year. He was a huge part of that. He will be available later on. So that'd be a really kind of cool name to look for. And, as we've seen before in the past, the Titans aren't afraid to go to those non-Power 5 guys who, put up big numbers, won a ton of football games. So that could be a name that, I haven't seen anything about the Titans specifically getting him, but just from my own perspective, watching him play a couple games last year, I really like the way that he plays, and he fits the bill of what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, and I think one thing to kind of keep in mind too, Drew, what you just said is that the fun thing about the draft is you're getting guys. Some guys are in the national media, and then there's going to be guys that the average, even football fan, have never heard of before, unless you're knee deep in the draft prospects, and you're just kind of tuning in and week out. The running back from App State, Memphis, these non-Power 5 schools. I think that's where the fun really comes into play on draft day. Just having our scouts going out across the country and just the name of the school doesn't really matter. I mean, you obviously need production. You need you like for them to be part of a winning program. But I always find it interesting when you get someone from like a Western Kentucky or someone that no one's heard of, but ends up doing some really good things for us.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that it's so easy when those don't work out. Right. And I'm guilty of this as well, is to say, why are we drafting guys from there? Like, just go get the proven SEC talent. But it's really fun when those guys work out. And, I think we've seen it proven even down to the FCS ranks, going, I mean, this isn't a revelation, but, there's talent all throughout college football, Division I, Division I AA. Sorry, I just can't get used to calling it FCS even still. There's talent all over the place. So, yeah, I mean, if you do your due diligence, you can play football, you can play football. So, shouldn't be afraid to go there to, the non-Power 5 schools if you think that they fit your needs.
Guys, I know Drew's got to hop here in a second, but I just wanted to ask, if you were, let's say the draft is tonight, if you had to bet, let's say you can bet on 2 players, who would you select? Who would you bet the Titans might select, on draft night next Thursday with the 29th pick, assuming they stay put?
Well, I'll go first because I mean, I think if Josh Jones is there, I think we take him. Kind of shore up that right tackle position. Give Dennis Kelly some competition. If we're not going offense, or rather offensive line, that's tough. I mean, if one of the top receivers for whatever reason falls, it'd be hard to not really heavily consider that. But I think someone on the edge is going to be, the position we go after, and it really kind of just depends on who else is going to be there at that time.
I'll say Gross Matos out of Penn State would be one name. He, from everything that I've seen, he's right in that range. He, if he falls just one or two picks, I mean, the Titans could scoop him up. So you never really know what teams are thinking. Gosh. And then, I mean, my last one, I'm going to go with Jalen Johnson. I think he's a good talent. If he's available there, I think the Titans look to shore up that secondary early and often. But, like we said, it's just so fluid. It's so hard to say. Teams move around so much. And like Raleigh said to begin with, these are luxury picks. I mean, the Titans, they're not going to crawl and get on bended knee and trade up to try to get like one specific name that we just keep hearing about. So it'll be interesting to see, who's available when their name comes up and if they're willing to trade down and if someone really wants to trade up to get someone. So definitely lots on the table when you're in the position the Titans are in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And if we've learned anything over the past several years, that John Robinson always has something up his sleeve, and it'll be interesting to kind of see, which calls he takes. And just like Drew said, if teams are willing to move up to get a particular person, then we could definitely be in a position to trade down, acquire more picks, and maybe snag some of these players we've been talking about that maybe we didn't think we had a shot at, because maybe they're a second round graded player and we've only got one of those. So you never know. I mean, again, Derrick Henry was a part of one of those situations. We traded down, the year prior, was able to pick up some quality, 7 picks in the first 4 rounds or something. So you never know what could happen. Raleigh, Drew, any closing thoughts kind of on this 2020 draft class?
I do not have any, no.
No, I feel like we've pretty much covered it. I mean, there's, just from a Tennessee perspective, obviously a guy like Juwan Jennings, as I said earlier, really curious to see where he goes. As it's just funny as this game has really, it's as social media has grown, as the game has grown, more money's come into the game, training has gotten better. We've seen these draft classes get just deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. There's more talent, where you used to kind of tune out when the 6th and 7th rounds would come out. Now you're really excited about those guys just as much as you are about guys earlier on. So just really excited to see some of the moves that the Titans make and where some of my personal favorite guys end up. And, you never know. I mean, some of these later picks could end up being, the guys that make a big difference. So we'll see what the Titans decide to do. And hopefully they make the picks that they need to, continue this growth that we're having. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, of course. In J-Rob, we trust. So it's going to be fun to watch next week. And if you guys want to do a little watch party, I'm down. I know that, got a little social distance. Maybe we'll just chime in on Skype and kind of do
Zoom
a live
party.
Yeah, a little Zoom party action. So, well, thanks guys for joining. Thank you all for listening at home, and hope everyone is staying safe out there. But again, tune in. We'll do a post-draft analysis, and we'll have Raleigh and Drew back on, hopefully, and we'll kind of give our take on what decisions we made for the 2020 draft class. But again, thanks again for joining, and thank you all for listening.
Tighten up.